Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerd Continuity. I am your co-host, Michael Dambold, and with me is the sickly and barely surviving Alex.
I'm not that sick.
I know, I'm joking.
I'm contagious also via podcast.
Oh, there you go. Sorry, guys. Yeah. So it's. I think we have been insanely busy over here.
Oh shit.
Both of us with our own projects, and it's that time of year. So everyone's wanting everything done at right before like tax season, like tax year is over and that kind of thing. So it's great for us, but it's also insanely busy. So, yeah, and plus we have our own personal stuff that we've been doing too. And you, dear sir, have been making enormous amounts of tutorials.
Oh, yes, because
videos.
I don't have a life, so I enjoy it. Yeah, no, we like this time of the year. Like, right before Christmas, let's get wasted on work and side projects and freelancing and...
Dude, I'm so high right now on this project.
Let's not sleep at all, because we don't need sleep.
Yeah, it's one of those times. It's the most wonderful time of the year, guys.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep. Okay, so we have some interesting topics this week. The first topic, it's an article from cssauthor.com, and it's called "Why You Should Stop Using Bootstrap." Yeah. Basically, it's a list of different frameworks, CSS-based frameworks.
No, actually, why you should stop using Bootstrap, it's my quote.
Oh, okay.
And the title is 50 plus best CSS frameworks.
Yeah, I'm seeing that now. Sorry, guys.
No, it's okay.
See, Alex is messing with me. It's interesting. But it's interesting because the article does start out saying that they believe that CSS frameworks save a lot of time.
Yeah.
They are famous for browser compatibility. Mm-hmm. They promote grid-based layouts. They're great for responsive design, and it helps to learn CSS.
Yeah.
And I just kind of grimaced at that a bit. Because if you're using a CSS framework, you should know CSS. You should not start using a CSS framework, if you don't know CSS.
Yes, exactly.
It's kind of like, no. Mm-hmm. Cars are great to learn how to drive. Well, yes, but not on the highway if you don't have a license.
By yourself.
Yourself.
Self-taught myself how to drive. Yeah.
13th birthday, here you go. Here's some keys. But yeah, and so it has a list of different CSS frameworks.
A lot. Like, I never heard about 49 of these frameworks.
Yeah, all I knew was Materialized.
Yeah.
And the first one is Materialized.css, and the rest I don't know.
And what's your thought about Materialized?
Well, I tested it. I took it out and I tested it, and I kind of, I guess, take it for a test drive, so to speak. Yeah. And it was interesting. Mm-hmm. It's a different markup. It's a different type of markup. It is using CSS, but in an unusual way. Mm-hmm. I didn't care for it too much. And here's why. It's not that the framework was not good, and it's not that the code was not good. I just couldn't see a reason to use it.
That's great.
In my job.
Yes.
Or personally. I don't know. I just looked at it, and it's an interesting concept, but I just can't bring myself to use it for work or for home use.
Yeah.
Bootstrap is almost universal at this point for responsive design, except for Foundation 5/6. Yeah, we've had a conversation about that.
Gross.
But I mean, you really just have those two as the dominating frameworks, and they're not hard to use.
Yeah.
In fact, Bootstrap is actually pretty easy to use.
Yes.
And just to introduce, and I did try to build stuff. I did actually try to build stuff with Materialized, and it was okay. I mean, it wasn't hard to use or to learn, but I just couldn't find a practical application for it. What do you think?
I kind of agree. Like, especially Materialized. Like, in this article, there are like 50 plus CSS frameworks, and in my opinion, a CSS framework should have mostly a really well-built grid system. Because if you have a grid system that it's fluid or responsive, adaptive, whatever you want, on top of that, you can build your own stuff and you can really learn CSS and build something amazing. But if like as it materialized, it's a super strict library of rules and pre-made stuff. You just use that. And so you're going to use Materialized to create fake Google material app, basically. And to edit and to change the style of Materialized is kind of painful because it's so coded in a way to simulate and emulate material design that if you want to do something slightly different, good luck, because it's just terrible. So in my opinion, a CSM framework shouldn't be so strict in their rules, shouldn't have this like pre-made stuff so hard coded in a way that you cannot change it, and should be as open as possible and should be as adaptive as possible for your own project. So it's kind of I don't know.
I think the key word there is adaptive.
Adaptive. Yeah.
And that's what Bootstrap allows us to do. Bootstrap is really nice in that in that extent that it allows us to really adapt and kind of, if we need to do something unusual, we can.
Yeah.
It doesn't kind of lock us into a certain way of doing things. So yeah, I think we kind of both agree on that. And I did, but after I got done with Materialized, I looked at the rest and I was like, no.
The good thing, the funny thing about this article, like the first one is Materialized, the third one is Essence, the essential material design, the fourth one is Material Framework, the fifth one is Leaf, a CSS framework for Google Material Design, the sixth one is Material Strap. Like, what the hell? Like right now, it's just material design, just nothing else. It's just, what the fuck?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I think we both agree on that, though. It's just one of those.
Yeah, just use the grid. Like, pick your favorite framework. Pick the grid. If the grid is really well built, then you can do whatever you want. And don't bother about, material design is the new thing, or like as it was the skeuomorphism before. Just these are trends, they're going away. But a good grid, you can use that forever. And if you learn how to use a good grid system, you're pretty set to build whatever you want and not rely on a layout or a pre-made design that is going to change because the trend is going to change. So
yeah. I agree. Yeah. Okay, so next up, we have some interesting news from Adobe.
Some terrible news.
Yeah, it's so Brackets and Dreamweaver are. There's some interesting stuff with that. Why don't you let us know what's happening with that?
And before, we just want to say that we don't hate Adobe, because every time we do a podcast, it looks like we're bashing on Adobe. But
I love Adobe.
Yeah, we love it, but they're doing some weird shit that we don't like. So Brackets, if you don't know, is a open source code editor specifically built for front-end developers. So it's great. He can manage a lot of cool CSS things, has a lot of cool functionalities. It's totally open source, and it's built totally and only with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So it's a code editor built with web language that you can edit, and in fact has like more than 800 extensions coded by users, and it's great. I used it for a lot of time, like I think for 6 months as my main IDE to code, and it's just amazing. It's just super fast, super light, and really you can change the parameters in the settings with a JSON file, so it's just completely open. And this project started 4 years ago, 5 years ago, something, when like Dreamweaver was kind of like losing a lot of ground in favor of Coda, Sublime Text, or these other more smaller, compact, and more like reliable code editor. So a small team of developers from Adobe decided to create this open source code editor. And Adobe said, okay, like, do whatever you want. We have Dreamweaver, so you can do your free small project that no one is going to care. But then the internet went nuts with this project. Everyone loved Brackets. And now, after 5 years, they realized that more than 300,000 users are using daily Brackets. And they noticed that more users are using Brackets instead of Dreamweaver. So what did they do? They say, okay, we're gonna take back our group of developers and we're gonna integrate all the brackets functionalities inside Dreamweaver. And to do that, we're gonna basically stop the development of brackets. So while before brackets was releasing a new version once every 2 months with a lot of patches and a lot of updates, now brackets is basically stuck at version 1.5 because Adobe wants to push forward their super crappy old Dreamweaver that I hate it. I don't want to use it. And of course, it's usual. So now we are looking at release update of an average of like 6 to 9 months for brackets. That's so.
So it goes.
Fuck it.
Well, I opened up Dreamweaver the other day, and I don't tend to use it. Period. Except for extreme circumstances, if that's the only thing.
Like the end of the word, it was an extreme circumstances to you.
Probably. That's about extreme enough.
Just so bloated.
The thing is just so bloated. There's so many like tab groups and stuff. And I used to work with someone who needed me to use Dreamweaver.
Okay.
Let's say that.
Oh crap.
And my current job is wonderful. They're like, do whatever do whatever's best. Sure. Like, I love these guys so much. I love them. They just are like, look, you know what you're doing. Just do what's best.
Yes.
But that in some previous jobs that was not the case, and I know some previous jobs require only Dreamweaver, for reasons. But I just remember it being so overloaded and bloated and just so clunky and stuff and if you know the thing is, if you know code, you really don't need much other than a text editor.
Exactly.
Period. And that goes for ASP. If you do ASP, if you do ASPX, if you do HTML, if you do even Cold Fusion, or anything like that, you just basically just need a text editor to fix stuff.
Yeah.
And what most of these text editor applications is just a text editor with extras.
Yes, exactly.
And that's why Sublime Text is so good.
Yeah.
Because it's just a text editor with extras. And you can install the extras yourself, and Coda as well.
Yes.
And it's just like, okay, they're kind of, that's why these two are so good. What I tend to use pretty much all the time is Sublime Text.
Yeah, it's great.
And I don't have a problem with it. Because I think both what Coda and Sublime Text have in common is that they're text editors first, and then programs second.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of programs out there now, especially web development programs, are programs first, text editors second.
Yeah.
And there really isn't. I don't want to say that. I have to be careful.
Say it.
I would prefer to use something that is a text editor first, and a program second.
Yes.
And I think most of us would.
Oh, sure.
It was kind of like that wonderful light from the heavens whenever I found out that Sublime Text actually existed. Because I was a bit late to the game because I was having to use some required programs.
Yeah.
And but this is, we're talking like 2011.
Yeah.
And I'm like, text. I think of my first Sublime Text dip was in Sublime Text 2. So it was a bit of a ways back.
Yeah.
But it was wonderful because I was like, I don't have extra crap everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
There are no tab groups. This is wonderful. Like, it was just like, like playing in a field with puppies everywhere.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. So yeah, no, I completely agree. I think I don't know what Dreamweaver is going to look like now.
Just as bad as usual, for sure. Way to go, Adobe.
No. I don't know. Obviously, Adobe has some fantastic programmers there. I think there are some decisions that are not the best. Okay, so the next thing that we have, unless you have anything to add.
No, I'm just pissed. I don't want to talk about it. It's just
okay.
Next.
Let's see. Next thing is a Medium article. Now, Medium has taken off, and there are some really nice things written with Medium. And I actually wrote an article that you need to go check out. Just look me up and look for the Medium article about being an excellent designer. I'm totally shamelessly plugging myself right now, but we're not talking about my stuff. We're talking about something written by
I try to read his name.
It's a Russian name.
Let's not butcher
He's the Russian equivalent of Peter.
Yeah, exactly. Pyotr Kotskorovsky, maybe?
Yep, I don't know.
Kotskorovsky, yes.
Anyway, he's Russian. He's a Russian dude.
Yes.
And he talks about color versus contrast. So go for it.
I go for it.
Yes.
So basically he focuses the attention of this article about which one of the color or contrast makes you click more the link of the buttons or whatever call to action you want to drive the user to click to. And there are all these, I don't know, like we study design. So have you ever had that teacher that like tells you, you should use the green because the green appeals to emotion of like success and money, or you should use the blue instead of red because the blue is more calm and quiet and relaxed instead of red is aggressive and all this kind of stuff. But this user basically saying that it's are all bullshit and we shouldn't care about this stuff. It's not related to our emotional status. But it's mostly related and it's primarily related to how the color that you pick for that button or the link relates to the overall environment. So the color palette of your website. And it gives a really streamlined example. He has a website with the majority of the links and elements are green. And if he puts the main button as well as green, he saw that, users were clicking the button, but if he changes the button to a red, even if the red is really like aggressive, it's really saturated, he saw an increase in clicks by the 21% compared to the green one. Even if the green is the kind of like logical right choice, the red that is outside of the color palette and is really it's in your face, it just slaps you in the face, he saw an increase of clicks. So the overall is like create something that creates a nice contrast and pops out compared to the environment, to the overall color palette of your website, and don't stick with the principles of design that a color should appeal to the emotional status or something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think I don't know. I think the whole emotional color thing that was briefly touched upon in my design class, but it was really more because the elements and principles of design don't actually talk about emotion, but they do talk about contrast.
Yeah.
And they talk about hierarchy, and that all of that works together. That color does work for hierarchy, and the principle that he gave. It's interesting because when he had everything green, those are considered passive colors. It's not exactly emotional, but cool colors tend to be more passive and actually don't have the type of conversion that active colors do, like the reds, yellows, oranges, that kind of thing. Because we're used to that kind of stuff being a little more grading in our society, and I think he actually has two projects below that one that you were talking about. One. And I would honestly dare say that the top version, and we're going to have these links available for people to click, right? Okay. The top one is actually not following the elements and principles of design well, because the buttons the call to action is blending. There's no contrast.
Oh, yes. It's blue on blue, basically. It's another gradation of blue. It's just terrible.
Yeah, I would be failed for doing something like this in college. This is... I mean, it looks okay, like you have the basics of it, but man, there's just not everything just turns into a wash.
Yes,
and it actually the blue is too light. It is far too light, and that text is too small. The text is really thin, and it's just not working well. And but the one below it though actually works well because it all ties together. The darker the screen, the thinner your white text can be.
Yes.
But the lighter the screen, the thicker it has, because all of a sudden the balance changes, and I think because I actually I agree. I'm seeing a lot of websites that are trying to it's like they have a basic grasp of color theory, but not a very strong one.
Yes.
Because they're like, well, we wanted them all to be similar colors. Well, no, you really don't.
Yes, exactly.
If you want conversion, you don't.
Yeah.
You know, if you want a set piece, yeah. But if you want conversion is contrast, and conversion relies on those contrasting, principles. Like the get free trial, man. If I went to usability tools and I saw this lack of contrast,
yeah.
I would just go, no, you just don't care enough.
Yes, exactly.
It just for something, and it's something weird that it does to your brain, because our brains are actually, for thousands and thousands of years, our species has relied on the elements and principles of design for survival.
Yes.
And let me, because this is actually this is not a throwback, but this is actually just a part of who we are.
Yeah.
If you're hunting, and you see a contrast in movement, a contrast in sound, and a contrast in color, all of a sudden because our brains are actually hardwired for the elements and principles of design.
Yeah.
And what design is it's actually stuff that we're creating to work with our brains.
Yes, exactly.
So, if you're a hunter out there and you're looking and all of a sudden you spot tracks, well, that's a contrast of the surrounding environment. You're looking for something that's important because your brain says that's important. Look at that.
Yes.
Pay attention to that.
And don't die.
Because because it's survival. It means food.
Yeah.
Or it means your survival from like a saber-tooth tiger.
Yes, exactly. And maybe a run. But yeah.
Or run, yeah. And but either way, it's a call to action.
Yeah, exactly.
That footprint could be a call to action.
Yeah.
And so all these thousands of years later, we're living in our our nice, comfortable houses. Everything's okay. We still move on those principles because those things are still hardwired into our brain. And so anything with the elements and principles of design, we're making pretty things using the same hardwiring in our brain of how we view the world. And it's not all survivalist, but that's why, like, seeing patterns in things, we have survived and we have become the dominant force on this planet because we see patterns.
Yes, exactly.
That's what separates us from other predators. That's what makes us the apex predator on the planet. Because we can notice patterns. Really bad example is the Blackfish documentary where they studied the patterns of the orcas and then they were able to catch them. That's, I think, a misuse of our ability, but it's still there.
Yes.
Like, it's still there. We're still able to figure out what's important and what isn't. And that's why whenever, back in, and I probably talked about this before, back in the 1800s, you had one general store in the United States. You had maybe one general store per town.
Yeah.
Towns were actually very small, and they were kind of like a TV set. All the buildings were together, and then it kind of branched out from that. And the reason that, so if you went to a general store, you would only have like one type of soap.
Oh, yes.
And so, or you would have one type of anything, And so what these companies used to do in the 1800s is they would decorate the packaging.
Yeah.
And the more decorated your packaging, the more importance your soap product held.
Sure.
Because that was a contrast to like the soap that they would make with animal fat.
Yeah, sure.
And the wax they would make and that kind of thing. But now that we have 50 types of soap and one market aisle, everything is fighting for your attention. And we actually make these decisions in less than half a second.
Yes.
It's actually a few milliseconds.
Yes.
By the time the information reaches our brain is already processing what we should and should not look at. I mean, it is lightning fast. It is the speed of thought. And so we're talking, we're talking milliseconds. So whenever you design, and that's one thing they taught us, is that we have to design something that is going to catch someone's attention and register in their brain in a form of hierarchy that's going to make their brain say, this is important, I should pay attention to this. And that's where we are now, because we don't have to do the whole general store thing of making people think that our stuff is important. And so if you have enormous patterns, right, because our body is like, our brain looks at those aisles and they just kind of register as patterns because it's all the same clumps of products. That's why logos in all brands have kind of distilled down to like one mark.
Yes.
Like one logo, because each one of them is now trying to, because in terms of big patterns, something that's unusual enough will catch our attention.
Yeah.
within that pattern. And so if everything looks the same, and all of a sudden Tide comes out with like a baby's head exploding, it's gonna catch our attention because
you gotta totally buy that soap.
Not actually exploding, but
yeah, no, absolutely.
It's like it's when you're walking through the hot sauce section, and like everything's trying to grab your attention, and then you have like those. Well, I can't remember what it was called, but it was a hot sauce with a dude's face on it, like he was in agony, and it was like this. It was a brilliant marketing plan.
Great.
I guess not that brilliant because I can't remember the name, but
you remember the picture, and if you you go back in the store, you're gonna search for that picture. So it's something that sticks in your mind.
Yeah, and it's not an illustration of tamales or hot peppers or cayenne. It's some dude's face that looks like he just ingested like lava. And that was good. That got my attention. But anyway, I got way too. I got design school on me. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But I agree. I kind of agree with him.
Totally. It's something that we know, and it's mostly. I think this article is mostly for beginner designers and for a designer that follows the indication of a client. That most of the time the client said, "Oh, my brand color is blue. I want everything blue. Also, my buttons should be blue." And that's like, no, that's not how it works.
Blue everything. Yeah, make all the buttons blue, all of them same color. Make everything the same color. Yeah, I've never had someone do that, but I've heard stories.
Yes, or nightmares.
So this Peter guy, I just saw that he likes UX, chill wave music, and pizza. I like this guy.
Yes.
I just saw this. We can be friends now.
Yes, we're gonna stalk him.
I'm totally gonna stalk him.
Yeah.
You're like, no, I'm not gonna stalk him. Okay, so we got some good stuff.
Yes.
This week. So tell us about this old versus new graphic.
I don't know. It's a funny thing. It's not like really related to something that we should learn or we should study. But it's funny that they created this infographic to analyze which kind of tool we were used to use. And I don't know, like the age comparison, kind of before the internet, to do design. To do mostly was like print design, but also graphic design before the internet era. And it's interesting because a lot of things that are listed as old stuff are still used today, or the same thing, like for example, rulers, guides, and like points and stuff are used exactly the same, but in a digital way. So they've been converted from a material word to a digital word. And it's kind of interesting, especially in the design process, color scheme. Also in my agency, we still use markers and pencil, and we do paper prototyping, something that now we have all these amazing tools and we shouldn't use paper, but instead like we keep using it. So yes, we had an evolution, but we still rely a lot on tactile things, like something that you can touch, something that you can feel, and you can manipulate.
Yeah. And I still use sketchbooks. I still have sketchbooks right beside me.
Oh god, I don't have any more space for sketchbooks.
Yeah, I got piles of them. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, there's some stuff that just works better, but we still, I still use a traditional camera when I need to. Not always, but sometimes it's better. Sometimes a digital camera is better.
Yeah.
Illustration, when I was in college, I used the Micron pens to build the eye charts and to build my logos and stuff like that. We did it traditional.
Nice.
Yeah, it was nice, but I cried a lot because you get like a point taken off if you had like one mark on your paper.
Yeah.
And he went down from. He started with a 100-point system, and then our second year we used a 10-point system, which means if you got one mark off, that was a grade, and like one tiny mark.
Yeah.
Like he would look at it with a magnifying glass.
Yeah. And
then my senior year, it was like a 5-point system, and I have shed many blood. I've had blood, sweat, and tears with that project.
Yes,
so
fun time.
I still have all my microns. I still use microns for inking and sketching and stuff, but It's, I feel like in some way making someone do it the old way, at least for a little bit, gives them the appreciation and the foundation to be able to do like a digital version.
Yeah.
Like back in 2000, I was in photography. I did photography, did state competitions, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I taught a photography class to other high schoolers. But now everything is digital. I think I have my cameras somewhere back in a box somewhere, but
nice.
Film is expensive.
Oh, yes,
it's very expensive. Especially if you want to be nice and get it on slide film. Like, no. Or
never going to happen.
Yeah, because like super saturated slide film is fantastic, but also there's a super saturation thing on Instagram. So, there's both of those. So, but yeah, it's... I think we still use a little bit of the old stuff, but it was interesting though on this thing. The top 10 most loved fonts.
Yeah.
Tell me if you agree with this. This was very interesting. Helvetica, Futura, Garamond, Trajan, Myriad, Verdana, Franklin Gothic, Times New Roman, Gil Sans, and Bodini. Or I'm pretty sure that's Bodoni. I think they got that wrong.
I don't know. Well, Helvetica is... Let's remember that since this year, both Microsoft and Apple, and also, Google, but Google switched before them, they still use Helvetica in their operating system. And Helvetica was invented when? In like 1800 or something?
Yeah.
It's like all this font list is freaking old. And
but Garamond was let me see. Garamond is at least 200 years old.
Yeah, it's like...
It was the whole point of that is it was a printing press type.
Yeah,
that's where it came from. Was the printing press, and I think it should stay around forever. No, yeah, it was named after the punch cutter Claude Garamond in the 16th century.
Oh God!
So we're talking. Let's see. The first type designed by Claude Garamond was the edition of Erasmus' book, Paraphrasis in Egalentiarum, sorry, Libros, Laurenti Valet, which I am so rusty on my Latin, I'm sorry, guys.
That's okay.
In 1530. So it's actually much older.
Oh my God, it's like almost 600 years old.
But it's amazing. I think that's wonderful that Garamond is, 600 years old and it's still as relevant as it was, back in the day. But Myriad can go away. Trajan can go away too, because both of those tend to be used.
Yeah.
And also they did get it wrong. It's Bodoni. I knew it was Bodoni. I remember Massimo Vignelli saying Bodoni.
Yeah, it's Bodoni. It's
and
not
his very
Bodini.
thick... Yeah, he had a very super thick Italian accent that I could barely understand him. It was like a Bodoni. No, far thicker. You're fine. You're good.
I can speak with his Italian accent. I can say Bodoni.
There you go, just like that. He would say it just like that.
Exactly.
But the way he would say it was very. He had a very melodic way of speaking. But I will always remember Bodoni. They got it wrong, but so keep going. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. No, it's interesting that we're using like fonts that are 500 years old as in a digital world. Like right now in 2015, we use it as an operating system font. And which are the font that we hate the most? The most recent one, the Comic Sans, that is just crap. Copperla and Papyrus. Who's using Papyrus other than my mom when she creates an invite for her, I don't know, pottery class or something like that.
Well, I have to say, I think Myriad and Trajan should go under the most hated fonts because I don't really know anyone who loves it. Myriad was okay. It's actually an okay font as a font. Problem is, everyone uses it because it's an Adobe. It's an Adobe default font. Yeah, it's the one that opens up. It's the font that Adobe opens up to whenever you open it.
Yeah, exactly. Myriad
and everyone
Pro.
just is lazy and is like, oh, let's do Myriad.
It looks like an Helvetica. So
yeah, Verdana's not very well loved either. But Times New Roman, The only reason Times New Roman is up there is because it's on every Microsoft application.
Yes. When you want to write a book and pretend to be smart, you use Times New Roman.
Exactly. Comic Sans, Comic Sans I agree with, and Copperplate, I kind of like Copperplate. That's my guilty pleasure.
Oh.
I actually talked to my old when I was talking to my old design teacher when I was in college. Mm-hmm. I said, Copperplate doesn't actually look like a bad font. And he said, well, it's just used so much and so poorly that people just don't like it. Yes. And he said it's not a bad font. Mm-hmm. He said, but it's not the best, and a lot of people default to that because they think it looks nice.
Yes.
And as opposed to Comic Sans, which is just gross.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for the guy who made Comic Sans because he still defends it to this day, saying that Comic Sans is great. And I'm like, no, dude, really, no. Please stop. So, brush script. They also forgot Curls. Curls is one of the most hated fonts as well. Let's not talk
about it. Let's not get
Curls is nasty.
It's just terrible.
like my friend Mary Schamberger, sometimes I would send her a logo and say, what do you think about this? She's like, it needs to be in curls. I'm like, shut up, I hate you. So, and then she'll send me some and be like, yeah, it's not in Papyrus. She's like, shut up, I hate you. So, we mess with each other all the time.
Yes.
And, but yeah, Papyrus, man,
what's wrong with this font? What's wrong with the people who created this font? Like, let's create a really crappy font.
Yeah. Well,
that's not try to find a logic explanation.
My first exposure to Papyrus was in a small youth group, basically.
When you got,
I thought I was edgy at 16.
When you got abused by a weird font. No,
I got abused. The font jumped off of the billboard.
Papyrus
and beat me
is
up.
a rapist. Was that
no? So I don't know. I think Papyrus is interesting. It's just not there. I think it's a font that got halfway to something good because anybody who has graphic design training, you actually kind of have to build letters.
Yeah.
And you have to build a letter face, and you have to you don't actually have to build a font, but you have to learn how it works and actually build it yourself and draw it yourself.
Yeah.
And I had to do it with pins. I had to use Micron pins, grid out a system myself. With a ruler, and then create a typeface letters, and it had to be exact. The curve had to be exact. All of that. So, coming from that background, I look at Papyrus and I think somebody started off well, and it looks like they could have done something interesting, but they just stopped.
Yeah. And then
it looks half done.
They put a texture on top to simulate the.
Then they put a texture on top. Yes.
Corrosive effect of the. Font.
Because Egyptians totally wrote in Papyrus.
Oh sure, yes.
So, but in Courier, just ignore Courier. Courier is just I have nothing good to say about Courier.
Let's not say anything.
I do not enjoy it.
That's it.
Courier is what I use. If I don't know.
If you hate your life and you wanna just
Now it's interesting with illustration. I think they're a little off with the illustration part because they were talking about how the drawing tablet, the Wacom, and the pen replacing the fine liner, but that's not true. Most illustrators that I know, actually the both we know, one in particular, Ursula Dorada, which I think we both follow. She's wonderful. She's from Brazil.
Yeah.
She does digital.
Yeah.
But she also shows pictures on Twitter of line drawings using I cannot remember the type of pen that she uses. It's very nice though. Very, very high quality pens. And she does an amazing job. But she can easily switch between print and digital.
Yes.
And I think both of them have their place. Because once you get into illustration, then you get into you get into a whole other thing. That's not design anymore. Illustration's its own thing. And so we all use pencils. We all use. I don't use dip pens, but I know Ursula does. I've used etching tools and lino cut tools, but that's for making prints.
Yes, exactly.
That's for printing it out. You're getting it going into a printmaking shop and getting rice paper.
Yes.
And doing an actual print.
The good old rice paper.
Yeah. I mean, I've done that before. That's printmaking. That's not illustration.
Yes.
I think they don't. I don't know.
That's kind of weird. I think they just listed all the old tools related to a graphic something.
Yeah. Well, in presentation, the spray mount. Oh God, I probably have somewhere I don't know. I've gained powers for the amount of spray mount I've been exposed to. Or just at school, I got so high on spray mount, and not on purpose. It's not on purpose. You just spray stuff over and over again.
You just breathe it, and it's just smell it, and you get high. It's just great.
And I mean, I would just run outside. I would run outside, spray mount stuff, and then come inside and then set my stuff.
My God.
And then go outside, spray mount, put some stuff. But you're supposed to do it enough, and it's
there was a time in the art school where I don't know why the teacher spread this rumor that it was totally fake, that if you put spray mount on top of your pencil sketch, it will kind of fix your pencil sketch, and it turns into a translucent effect. So there was this month where we spent pretty much all our money in spray mount and spraying all our sketches, and they were untouchable after that. And then we put all the sketches in a pile, and this pile got so sticky that basically we threw away months of sketches.
It was horrible. What is wrong with people? That's evil.
It was there, and the school was permeated with this cloud of spray mount, and no one could breathe, and it was just great.
People knew in my school whenever that it was that time of the semester when kids were spray mounting their stuff, because we come outside and spray mount, but it would just turn into this vaporous thing. It's like the outside of the printmaking studio, you could just smell it, and it just starts wafting out. There's nothing you can do about it. And then also Bestine. There's a beautiful smell of Bestine in the room as well. Yeah.
Nice time.
They're like, this will really hurt you. Don't breathe it in. We're like, okay, thank you.
But use it anyway.
And so, okay. So the next thing is, unless you have anything else.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's another link you found. This is awesome. Yeah. This is from the Nielsen Norman Group and nngroup.com. And it talks about which comes first, layout or content. So tell us what this is about.
It's kind of a long article. I don't even understand why it's that long. It should be kind of obvious. But of course, in the process of designing, we don't have the magical unicorn of the client that gives us all the content at the beginning and say, this is my content. You can create a design around my content. Every time we have the content is most of the time at the end of the design, and of course the content is just horrible and destroys completely our layout. So this article analyzes how you should properly design a layout that is suitable for every type of content, and how you should not tie your layout to a specific amount of content, because as soon as a user puts his hand on the CMS or the backend and start writing his own shit, is gonna destroy completely whatever you did. So we should follow some specific rules, like creating a flexible layout, or if you can, you should try to put content as soon as possible, even if it's lorem ipsum, at least just put real content that occupies some space and gives you kind of the idea what could be and what's gonna be, and just plan everything to be as scalable as possible, and just smash the client's head as much as possible to give content as soon as possible, something like that.
I've actually in the recent years made it a requirement to just sit down and talk to someone. Sometimes all that it takes is you sitting down and talking to someone and saying, what do you want to see? What website would you like? What kind of... Because once you determine the type of content, it's actually, once you do it long enough, you can actually kind of gauge what type of what kind of website you actually need to make.
Yes.
Depending on the content. So and obviously it's a given depending on the client. Yep. So let's say you have someone who owns a trucking business, and let's say actually two versions. One is a trucking business and they just need an online presence. I can say this because I'm not working on a trucking anything right now.
Yeah.
So they just want an online presence. They really don't care about much else. And they just want something to just hit Google search engines with their name. And so that's actually a very easy project. And you say, then, my next question will be, okay, what type of content? Do you just want an About Us page? Do you want directions to your offices? Do you want an employment application on there? Like basic stuff, like thinking the way that they would think, or the needs specific to what they would want. And I actually find that just giving them random suggestions, even if it's a dumb random suggestion, it gets them thinking.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I will specifically ask something that I know they'll reject as long as it just gets them to think. Like sometimes, like if that's that trucking company that I don't have a trucking company that I've ever done work for. But if I'm talking to these people, I'll say, well, do you want pictures of your trucks on there? It's kind of a dumb question, but I basically got their mind working in that in that area. And if they say, of course we want pictures of our truck, what are you thinking? Oh, but let's get pictures of our office staff in there too.
Yes.
See, all of a sudden their brain starts firing and they start sitting there going, okay, now because what it's doing is it's kind of spurring them and encouraging them to think about their website in terms of content. Because sometimes clients don't know what content they want on there. They just know they need a website. And hopefully either if you work in a firm, you have someone who can kind of counter that type of attitude.
Yeah.
Or that type of non-activity, I guess, on the part of the clients. Or if you're dealing with them directly, it's always good to just keep asking questions. Even if they're dumb, even if they're going to get upset sometimes. And not offended, but just like, oh, of course we want this, as long as even if they get upset, as long as they just start thinking about it, that's a win.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's going to be less of a headache later when they decide that they do want staff pictures.
Exactly.
To be jammed into a like a gallery of staff. Like, can you add a slideshow? Can you add a slideshow gallery on the About Us page? Why would you do that? So, because if you start, the earlier you talk to them before you do anything,
absolutely,
the easier it's going to be. So
the really important thing that you said at the beginning is like it depends pretty much everything about from the type of project. If you know the type of project, something that is missing in this article, like this article is really focused on the container-first approach or the type of content and the type of layout that you should apply, but it misses the most important thing, like what kind of product you're gonna build, like who's your client and what they want. So even if they don't know the exact type of content, you should consider what are you going to build. Because if you're building a website for a medical structure, you're building a website for a kids playground or a restaurant, you already having this simple information, you already know pretty much how it's gonna be, and you can kind of figure it out what kind of content is gonna be inside those containers and that layout without knowing the actual content. So the basic important thing is knowing what you're building, what's your final goal, what's the website or the layout or the product that you're releasing.
I think some of this, I mean, obviously we're both surprised by the stuff we see, but I think if you're doing it enough, like I don't know, I graduated in 2007, and so I've been doing this now for like 8 years.
Yeah,
and I've done enough to just kind of know what I'm getting into.
Yeah,
and and you'll also know with the client. Sometimes you will not have to ask those questions.
Yes,
there have been clients that I've had in the past who have always provided everything, and I've never had to ask questions. But then there are those who may not have maybe enough experience, and maybe they need some guidance, maybe they need some encouragement, maybe they need to kind of figure out the process, and sometimes they'll come to you and say, I don't know much about this, but I'm willing to learn. And you kind of go through the process together. And you can kind of gauge it after a while to kind of see, and not that this person, not to see whether or not a client is going to be a problem, although that is important, but to see how much work is going to be needed in the communication process. And then you can gauge how much time you need to put in to that communication process. Because to be honest, no matter the client's communication process, your goal is to have a good product at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter if they're the best client in the world or the worst client in the world.
Yes. As
a professional, we have to get the best website out that we can.
Yes.
With the constraints that we have. And so that, you know, and so most designers who have lasted this long, like you and I,
yes.
We know that there are things you can look for and ways you can kind of speed up the process and
totally.
try to make everything as streamlined. Basically, at this point, it's just streamlining.
Yeah, stuff. You can ask those small, like few annoying questions that will put you on the right track, and you don't need to like do hours and hours of research for content. So.
Exactly. Well, and I want to just in case somebody misunderstands, asking the annoying questions are not asking questions that will offend your client.
Oh yeah, totally. It's not like.
But for anybody who's new, do not offend your client. It does not matter what their attitude is. It doesn't matter if they're the nicest and sweetest person on the planet. It doesn't matter if they're the worst. It doesn't matter if they call you Hitler.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. Just be a professional.
Yes.
And asking the annoying questions, and I want to be very specific, is sometimes asking questions along the lines of what you need to accomplish the website. And so for instance, that trucking company, I know we're going to have pictures of the trucks.
Yeah.
But I also wonder if they want their faces on the website or if they want pictures of the warehouse, if they want pictures of the mechanics, that kind of thing. So, you don't have to necessarily ask that in a way that makes you seem stupid. But you can ask them, do you want pictures of your trucks? Which, I know you might want. Have you thought about any other pictures? And you're just being very polite, and you're politely asking them if they, want more content. And sometimes they'll say, oh, I didn't even think about that. That's wonderful. Yeah, we'll take some pictures and send them over. And sometimes they'll say, we'd really prefer to keep our privacy.
Yes, exactly.
We prefer just to have photos of our trucks so people can recognize it. Both of those are completely acceptable. And one thing that designers should never be is pushy.
Yes.
So,
totally.
You can kind of say, you can tell someone that if something is wrong and say, this is going to wreck your website. This is horrible. This is going to ruin SEO.
Yeah.
But you can say it in a professional manner, but
yeah, sure.
If sometimes they just don't know. And so I have come across so many people who have been so hesitant to deal with designers because they will legitimately not understand SEO.
Yes.
And SEO, dude, we both do SEO and it's still, sometimes I don't understand it. And I don't understand why we're having
it changes every day. So it's kind of like,
it's just depending on, it depends on, a certain company's way of processing things. And so, sometimes, people don't understand SEO and they have dealt with a designer in the past who has gouged them for money.
Yes.
And has taken advantage of them because of that, or taken advantage of them because of the type of company that they are.
Yes.
Or has been rude to them if they've had legitimate questions. Because you do have to think about this, especially for new designers. You have to think about this from the perspective of the owner. Because if the owner is going to shell out several $1,000s for a website, they need to know what's happening. And they need updates. And they need processes. And they don't need to be talked down to whenever they have legitimate questions. Because the thing is, it's not their job to understand SEO.
Yes.
That they're running a company. They don't need to worry about that.
Yes.
We need to worry about that. And we need to worry about explaining to them in simple terms what SEO is. And not to talk down to them, not to make them sound like, if you've made your client feel like they're 5 years old, you failed. Like, just being very, very cut and dry here. This is a business and this is the business world. And if you can explain something to them to make them understand it, then that's really like explaining how a website's built. I actually explained what building a website as the framework is the frame of the house, and then creating the content is filling the rooms. And whenever we do the design, it's painting the walls, putting on the walls, putting on the paint, and painting the shutters, figuring out what kind of windows we want, that kind of thing. And that's not derogatory. That's exactly how it works. And And so then they say, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And it's not derogatory. It's not making them feel like they're 5 years old. It is the best analogy to building a website.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, if you're in a process and they say, I don't exactly know what we're doing now, I'll just say, we're building the frame of the house. That's what we're doing. We're trying to figure out how many rooms the house needs. And then it's just much easier to do that. And just speak plainly. Speak plainly to your clients. Do not treat them like they're stupid. Just talk to them like adults. And that will be reciprocated. If it's a bad client, then you'll get it from another client because karma's real. So I'm sorry. I just went on a rant, but it's
okay.
I've had to deal with so many potential people over the years and companies who are just like, man, I was just treated like garbage by that previous designer.
It happens all the time. I know.
And I know we like to talk about how much we're put upon.
By
people, but
the core is like you have to empower your client, and you have to help him to understand and feel smart and not feel stupid or frustrated because he doesn't understand what we're doing and he's just wasting money. So, and it's good because you're gonna have good content for your design, so it's perfect.
It's basically what you're doing is you're communicating in a way that helps them understand. It gives them the feeling that they're not wasting money on you, which is the worst thing. Now, some people will do that. Some people will always say, I'm wasting too much money on this, but it's not they're not for a legitimate reason. It's an agreed upon reason on the contract. And they're still mad. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a good client, everything's going well, and all of a sudden they start feeling like they're wasting money. That's dangerous. You are in the danger zone, Kenny Loggins, and you need to get out of that fast. And so if you need to double time it and give them a discount, then do it. Do whatever is, if they start feeling like they're losing money on you, they're not going to stay around. And if they start legitimately, if there's a problem with a database you're building and they're like, well, am I going to have to pay for all of this? And they because it's going to run them $100, $200 over budget. Which for some people is huge. Docking them eating that time can sometimes not only really help you with a client, but help you with future clients too. Because it was an unforeseen, with stuff with unforeseen issues with building a website. Sometimes eating the time is the best thing you can do to maintain a good relationship with a client. So, anyway, sorry.
That's okay.
I really got off on that one.
Interesting.
It's something that I've seen over the years. Because it's not that the customer is always right. It's just having a good relationship with people is important. So, okay, but I'm going to let you rant on this. This next one, Fuse Tools.
Yes.
So explain Fuse Tools to us.
It's something useless that is going to fail. That's the explanation. No, I don't. It's an amazing product. It's really great. I saw it, I tested it. It's an open beta, so you can download it and test it. It's really mind-blowing what he can do. Basically, it's a tool for app designers and app developers where you can code whatever app you're doing. You can import your design from Sketch, Photoshop. You code what you're doing. You deploy live your code to your smartphone without passing through all the bullshit of iOS developer license or Android Eclipse to deploy on your phone, blah, blah, blah. You just deploy within Fuse, and whatever editing you do on your computer, on your source code, automatically the update is deployed through the cloud to the app on your phone. So you change the padding, automatically changes the padding. You swap the color scheme, automatically swap the color scheme. So you see in real time what you're coding on your phone, and you don't have to guess weird stuff, or you don't have to compile the code in Xcode or deploy to your smartphone through a USB. It's really handy. It's really great. Where it fails miserably, though, is these amazing and super smart developers that created this tool. They decided to create a new markup, a new code language from scratch. And that it's totally it doesn't recall any previous language. If you see, it looks like a extended version of XML. And you remember XML like 10 years ago was the future. It was like, oh, XML is great. You can write databases with XML and you can connect all the application with XML. You can extend HTML. Where is XML right now? It's dead. It's just used for sitemaps. It's like a hidden file in your website that recall an XML sitemap of your website, and that's it for SEO purposes. That's it. XML is just horrible. It's not used anymore. And so
except for iTunes.
Except for iTunes, you have to in fact, how convoluted is to create a fucking XML podcast for iTunes? It's just terrible.
Yeah.
So that's what,
and it has to be the way that iTunes wants it. It's not just making an XML file.
Yeah, no,
it has to conform to their very nebulous standards.
Yeah. And that's, in my opinion, what's gonna happen to this tool. It's great. Everyone is gonna use it, is gonna try it because it's really groundbreaking, the logic and the idea behind this tool. But then, first, who's willing to spend time in learning a new coding language just for one product? Yeah. And second, which company or like which boss is willing to pay you, or which client is willing to pay you for a product that if these guys from Fuse decide to cancel the product, you cannot use anymore anything you did. Like if you code in AngularJS and AngularJS gets shut down, you can still use AngularJS in the entire internet ecosystem. If Fuse gets shut down, the source code of Fuse that it's, I don't even remember the name, but this code is gonna be useless, totally useless, because it's not compatible with anything else other than Fuse. So huge fail.
And the weird, it actually reads a bit like jQuery, but really oddly. And JavaScript.
Yeah, they have two codes. That is the front-facing code that is kind of like the XML, HTML mashup. And then they have this JavaScript code to call databases and handle like updates of the DOM.
No.
So there are two different type of codes. And they call it UX markup. That's the name of this new coding language. UX markup.
Kill it with fire. No, I am not going to learn. Oh my gosh, no. Because, we were talking about this earlier. As a developer, you get to the point where I think some developers do not understand that what they're creating is not useful sometimes.
Yes.
They think of this new thing. And we actually see this quite often as developers, where somebody comes up with this new idea. It's a novel idea. Yeah. It's very interesting, but it is completely unusable because it is incompatible with anything currently existing.
Yes.
And then they show these these videos. I mean, this video on the site, they show these videos of, people working in the Pacific Northwest where you are, in these giant glass walls.
Yes, everything is great.
Yeah, everything's great out there, and it's giant glass walled firms, and they're all they've got token people everywhere. Yeah. They've got your token, guy with glasses, your token hipster, your token white dude with really, who looks really businessy, and the guy who looks like he just walked off of the street after a hipster parade, and working side by side, and there's unity, quote unquote, and coffee pictures and stuff like that. And it's all just very basic, generic stock photography and stock videos.
Yeah.
Trying to push this idea, and then they've got your CEO, and it's actually becoming really old now. Yeah. They've got someone from the spokesperson who either has a tattoo, or a beard, or a man bun, or something to tell us how revolutionary this code is.
Yes.
The whole thing tanks the next year, and none of us remembers it.
Yes.
And it's getting old. The startup thing is starting to, because so many startups have failed with that kind of stuff. When we begin, as developers, we're actually more hesitant to adopt something new.
Yeah.
Because especially something as closed off as that UX, those two UX codes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you have a diversified business, in any sense of the term, you need to learn what has been around, what is currently being updated. We know HTML will be around forever.
Yeah.
We know JavaScript is going to be around whether we like it or not. Yeah. jQuery is going to be around. CSS, XML is going to be around, even though we don't like it. JSON is going to be around. We know that we're investing in something that will yield a reward. But when you present something like a closed off system, like that's why people were like, "Oh God, Swift, why?" Because
again.
Yeah, because what if Swift goes away in a year and somebody's spent like 50 hours learning it?
Yes, exactly.
It's
exactly.
Completely useless.
We are super careful also with open source program, like especially like generic question. Do we freaking need another coding language?
Yeah.
We need?
I don't. We need to fix the coding languages we have now. We don't need new ones.
Exactly.
It's like. That's my thought, and I'm probably getting a little curmudgeon-y about it, but I'm getting really sick of this new stuff because we can't even fix jQuery. We've got problems with jQuery and HTML, and like I'm connected and signed up for the W3 boards, trying to work on HTML5, and like people are constantly working on it, trying to improve it.
We cannot even style. We cannot even style an input file properly, like a checkbox or a select box. After
treating it like a table.
After 20 years of HTML, and let's create something new from scratch that it's a closed environment. It's not even open source, so it cannot be used by anything else or extended by anything else other than these 10 cool dudes that they work in this glass environment.
Well, and my thing is, if I'm looking at a new quote unquote new web thing, I would rather spend my time to learn Sass and Less, which are extensions and compilers of CSS.
Yes.
Because here's the thing: if Sass and Less go away in 20 years, I still know CSS.
Yes.
And I can still say, and it still helps me to have known and have worked with Sass and Less.
Yes.
It does not help me in 20 years to learn 2 new codes that will never be picked up again.
Yes.
And most developers, think the way we do of, my time is limited.
Yes.
Because the thing is, we learn this at home. We don't get unlimited amounts of time to learn code at work. We can. Some jobs are really good about that.
Yeah.
I mean, my job's good about that. That they want training, but that doesn't mean I can train all day every day.
Yes.
And none of us can. And so we actually have to go home, and while we're watching television or while we're doing something else, we actually have to take time out of our lives to do it. And so we really have to become picky about what we do and do not learn.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I mean, that's why learning Sass and again, it's like our survival technique. What is most important?
Yeah, I know. It's like it's an amazing idea, but it's achievable with a way better tools in the background. Like, why you have to create a custom language that no one knows except those 10 people that are working to this product. And there's something similar called Onsen UI. Onsen UI is a framework library of elements for app design and app development. And even if it's a kind of a new framework with new coding language, everything is based on AngularJS and JavaScript. So even if you don't know anything about Onsen US, you can download it and use JavaScript to code your app. And that's amazing because you can use your own coding language, but you can roll back down to JavaScript or AngularJS, and it's going to work. And it's great. These guys created this framework, this new coding language, UX markup, that it's gonna be the main reason of the failure of their product.
Yeah, and I love the idea that you can code something and it goes live to the application.
Yeah.
I love that, but here's the thing. I think somebody else is going to pick it up.
But you can do it. Like you can do it right now. If it's the stupidest idea ever, but sometimes I do it. I use Dropbox as a virtual environment. So I upload my code on Dropbox, and on my cell phone, I open the HTML5 from Dropbox. So every time I refresh the code and upload the code and save the file on Dropbox, automatically is updated on my phone, and I can check the code in real time. So it is not that complicated having a file in the cloud that updates automatically on all your devices. But just do that. Create that connection, and it's going to be great. But don't force me to learn a new code.
Right. And I think that's always going to be the attitude. I mean, now in the future, in the future, there may be a code that is so simple. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm thinking is going to happen in the future. We're going to see simplified versions of code that we currently have right now that will unify in the future. And we're talking in the future, like maybe 20 years or something. We're going to have new code that works with existing languages.
Yes.
And not only existing languages, it simplifies them and it's still read by existing languages.
Yes.
So it's going to be like a Esperanto of HTML type of web languages. It'll be like an HTML. It'll be like a beautiful unification of HTML or maybe like JavaScript with jQuery with JSON with XML with just all kinds of different things, and you'll just be able
amazing.
And it'll just be kind of a unity of different languages.
Yes, exactly.
And maybe HTML as the controller, or CSS as a controller, or a JavaScript control as a controller. I don't know. But something in the future, eventually, because it's almost like we've got to start speaking the same language for better web design. Because right now we're kind of fractured. And I think the more we work towards unifying our current languages instead of making new ones,
yes,
I think the better off we'll be. So anyway, so I think that's it for this episode.
We did it.
Yeah,
we won.
And next week we're gonna have more great topics.
Yes.
More rants. I'm finding that we're both having pretty much the same rant on things.
We hate everyone.
No, I think we hate inconvenience and we hate dumb stuff.
Yes, so we hate dumb stuff. Exactly. Shipping has a subtitle of the nerd continuity. We hate dumb stuff.
Don't be dumb. I think I think there are ways to progress without like sacrificing the basics. Cool. All right, guys. Well, you have a great week.
Awesome.
And a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.